Welcome to training number 8, Gratitude and Connection. This is a quote from William Arthur Ward. He said, "Gratitude can transform common days into Thanksgivings, turn routine jobs into joy, and change ordinary opportunities into blessings." This is a really beautiful and poetic quote. It really captures the joy that we can experience in life when we're focused on the positive things, when we're showing gratitude and connecting with others and focused on those good, beautiful, and true things in our lives, rather than always focusing on the negative or looking for what's wrong or making problems where there necessarily doesn't need to be problems. But by focusing on what's good, beautiful, and true in our lives, we can really turn everyday moments into moments of joy and blessing. And now I'm just going to give you an outline of what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to talk about the neuroscience of the brain. And with that, we're going to talk about some of our programming, some of the tendencies of our brain and where those tendencies come from. We'll talk about our ability to redirect those tendencies and to control and then develop certain parts of our brain and diminish other parts of our brain through self-directed thought. And then we're going to also talk about some of the benefits, some of the studies that have been shown, some of the benefits that have been shown from developing positive emotions and also creating connection. And then we're going to talk about cultivating positive emotions. And the next two parts are really going to be about practical exercises. We're going to be applying what we've learned in the first part. We're going to be applying our self-directed thought to develop positive emotions and also to develop creating connection, develop our ability to connect with others, and to develop relationships. So those are going to be practical exercises. We're going to be applying them and developing them right here on the call. But first, we're going to talk about some of the neuroscience of the brain. And the reason we want to do this is that it's important to understand our genetic programming and where our tendencies come from. It's also important to know that you have the ability to influence and physically change the structure of your brain. If you don't do this, you'll be driven by prehistoric programming and live a shorter and less fulfilling life. What we're going to do with this is talk about our genetic programming, where it comes from, and why our minds are drawn towards the negative. And then we'll talk about studies that showing that we have the ability to influence the structure and the neural patterns of our brain. And then we're going to talk about the positive emotions, the benefits of positive emotions in our life. But first, our genetic programming. This is a depiction of your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, and he's stressed out. And for good reason. He doesn't know where his next meal is going to come from. There are animals that are trying to eat him. There's saber-toothed tigers, there's lions and wolves that are trying to eat him. And sometimes when he eats the wrong berries, he gets really sick. And he's even had friends and family members die from eating the wrong berries. So he's really stressed out, and he's been programmed through evolution to be stressed out for survival. So when he's sitting by the fire or he's trying to relax, if he hears a noise in the bush, he gets really paranoid. He's wondering what that noise is, what could it be? And this is a good thing back in those days when if he was paranoid about noises in the bush, he would be more cautious and he would protect himself if it was an animal trying to eat him. And if he was wrong and that noise was nothing, it was just a bunny or a squirrel, and he got stressed out for no reason, there wasn't a lot of downside. It didn't really matter. It was better for him to be stressed out and not get eaten than to be stressed out than to be relaxed and get eaten. So the thing you want to take away from this is that we're programmed to focus on the negative. We're programmed to scan for what could go wrong. We're programmed to constantly search for what could go wrong in the future, where we're going to get our next meal from, and focusing on all the negative things that could happen. So we have a real negativity bias in our genetic programming. We're always scanning for what's negative. And you may notice this in your day-to-day life. You know, if 5 mildly good things happen, 4 neutral things, and then 1 negative thing happens, when you're trying to fall asleep, what are we focused on? Often just thinking about the one thing that went wrong. Even though 5 good things happen, we're focused on that one bad thing because we're constantly just scanning for what could go wrong. And our brain evolved to have specialized memory systems to lock in those negative things. So we're like Velcro for the negative. Our brain is absorbing and focusing on and scanning for what could go wrong for those negative things for survival reasons. And in the time of our ancestors, being stressed out and being paranoid and being anxious all the time didn't have a lot of negative effects, and the benefits outweighed the negative effects because most people didn't live past 30 years old. So being stressed out and anxious didn't really matter that it was wearing down their heart because most of them didn't live past 30. But today, people are living longer, they're living more safe and comfortable lives. And the stress that we have from this prehistoric programming is the negative effects really outweigh the benefits because it wears down our hearts, it wears down our body, and it just reduces the length of our life from being constantly stressed out and anxious. And the benefits aren't really that much because most of us live pretty decent lives. We know where our food is coming from tomorrow. We've got a refrigerator full of food, and we've got home, we've got shelter, we've got water, and we've got a lot of those basic needs met. And we're not worried about animals trying to eat us. So being anxious all the time isn't really producing a lot of benefit. It's not very helpful. And the negative effects are reducing the length and quality of our life. So I want you to go ahead and pause the video and think about how your mind sometimes focuses on the negative. How does this show up for you? How are you scanning for the negative? And I like that word scanning because we're sometimes not focused or ruminating on negative, but there may be some good things happening. But nonetheless, our mind is like looking for what could go wrong and just scanning for those negative things in some of the good and beautiful moments of our life when we could be enjoying them. So go ahead and pause the video and think about how this negativity bias, this genetic programming shows up in your day-to-day life and how it shows up with your family, at work, with your friends, and those beautiful moments. How does it show up for you? So go ahead and pause the video and think about that now. Great, welcome back. Well, the good news is that we actually have the ability to control our thought patterns. We have the ability to control our neural patterns and influence this. We don't have to default to this prehistoric, outdated, old programming. We can actually reprogram our brain through conscious thought and using our mind to reprogram it and focus on the things that we do want to focus on. And this is just one example. This is a case study that they did on London taxi cab drivers. It was done by Eleanor Maguire at the University College London. And the reason they studied taxi cab drivers is because in London specifically, because being a taxi cab driver in London is extremely difficult. The streets in London kind of just evolved because people were just driving wherever they felt like, and they kind of got formed randomly as people were just moving wherever they felt like moving. And the streets really weren't planned out that well because it's such an old city. And so the streets are just winding and moving in all different directions, and they're not on a grid system, and they just really don't make a lot of sense. And it's very difficult to navigate through all these winding, complicated, spaghetti string streets moving in all different directions. So the training and the testing is very rigorous to become a taxi cab driver in London. So they didn't just study taxi cab drivers in this study. What they did is they looked at people before they started the training and then after the training, and they looked at how their brain changed because of this self-directed conscious thought. You know, they were constantly thinking about certain types of memory systems, and by using those memory systems repeatedly, it actually physically changed the structure of their brain. So it's very difficult to pass the exam and to get through the training. So only about 39 of the 79 people that were trying to become taxi cab drivers, about 50% passed. And the drivers who earned their license performed far better on memory tests, even though they had performed equally 4 years earlier. And the MRIs showed that the successful trainees, their hippocampus, had grown over time and had physically changed the structure of their brain. The hippocampus has to do with memory and learning. And they compared them to bus drivers who had a similar stressful job but didn't have as much complicated of a job. They just had a similar consistent route. And they also compared it to just the average person of the same age and intelligence, and they showed that they had larger than average posterior hippocampus, which had to do with spatial navigation. So again, physically changed the structure of the brain. But what's also interesting is they had smaller than average anterior hippocampus, which has to do with visual memory, about similar to, that's visual memory meaning memorizing a photograph. You know, like if you look at a person's face, how many details can you remember about their face, or some really artistic picture, remembering the colors of it. So visual memory actually diminished. And the licensed drivers did worse on visual memory tests, but they did better on spatial, which had to do with solving problems, memorizing details, and that spatial awareness was enhanced. So what this tells us is what we focus on and what we use consistently grows and physically changes the structure of our brain, builds those areas, and the things that we don't use and focus on diminish, they atrophy. And this is a lot like building a muscle. You know, using that muscle repeatedly will build it, make it stronger, and the things that we don't use, the muscles that we don't use, will atrophy and get weaker. So this shows we have pretty much direct control over the parts of our brain that we want to build and develop. And this one is specifically very important because it's focused on memory. And that's what we're really focusing on here when we're focusing on negative emotions and positive emotions, because as I said before, the memory systems for negative moments are highly reactive and highly specialized. They're designed to absorb those negative moments and instill them into our memory and our learning and our habits and our emotions. So by focusing on positive emotions, we can start to absorb those into our memory. So we can directly influence the function and the ability and the strength of our ability to absorb positive emotions. And that's a beautiful thing to do, because what we're not trying to look at positive emotions or positive moments in our life because we're trying to look at things from a rose-colored glasses view. We're trying to pretend everything's perfect. All we're doing is balancing the scale. Because I said before, we're highly focused on the negative things, where our brain is designed to absorb and overreact to negative things in our life. And the positive moments just have standard issue memory systems, and a lot of the positive moments and positive emotions simply slip through and don't get fully absorbed. We forget them, and they don't have the benefit that they could have, because there's a lot of benefits to positive emotions and positive memory. And here is just a few of them. So some of the benefits of positive emotions are reduced stress, boost well-being, aids with coping, developing resilience, increased performance and engagement, and helps with making healthy choices. And the benefits of connection are also similar, but there's some additional benefits which are really interesting. There's less stress, as with positive emotions, but there's also better healing. It's been shown that people with healthy relationships improve from surgery faster. They recover from surgery faster. They again have healthier behaviors, but they also have a greater sense of purpose in life because of those connections and meaningful connections in their life. And this one's very interesting, this last bullet point about longer life, because some studies have shown that having healthy relationships or the lack of healthy relationships has a similar or more impact than blood pressure medication, exposure to air pollution, or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you don't have those healthy relationships, that connection within your life, it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is insane. And this is again about the length of your life. So the people that smoke 15 cigarettes a day, it reduces the length of their life. People that don't have healthy connected relationships, reduces their life about the same as 15 cigarettes every single day. So I want you to think about why you would like to develop positive emotions and connections, what's important for you to develop in these, and offset, again, balance that scale. If you're constantly focused on the negative, it's going to reduce the length of your life, reduce the quality of your life. By focusing on the positive and developing these positive emotions, we can have some increased productivity and resilience and a longer life as well. So go ahead and pause the video and think about which benefits are most important to you. I want you to write them down as a reminder for yourself so that you can remember In those moments when you could just, again, be stressed out and focused on negative, focused on solving problems, reminding yourself why you want to focus on positive emotions and connections in those moments and the benefits for you personally will help you overcome that automatic, prehistoric, programmed response. So go ahead and pause the video and think about which benefits are most important to you and write them down. Let's go ahead and do that now. Great, welcome back. So we've talked about the neuroscience of the brain, including our prehistoric programming, our ability to change the structure of our brain, and the studies showing the benefits of positive emotions and connections. And the next two parts are going to be practical exercises. We're going to be applying self-directed neuroplasticity, which is just about focusing on specific memories, specific attributes, specific functions of the brain to develop them and strengthen them, just like those taxi cab drivers developed and strengthened a certain part of their hippocampus. We want to do the same thing with our positive emotions and our connections. So we're going to do some exercises to lift some weights and build some muscle around these two things. So first one is developing and cultivating positive emotions. Thank you for watching this clip from our emotional intelligence training. The training is designed to help you improve your self-confidence, your stress management, and your conflict resolution skills. If you'd like to gain access to this full training video for free, you can click the link below.